IVM. Good morning, Ayushi.
Good morning, Dash. This is the second time I've seen you this week this early on my screen.
I have to say, I love a good morning recording because I just feel like we wake up with the freshest, loveliest energy and we have so much love to give. Ayushi scratches her chin.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it, because the other way of looking at it is that we do morning recordings. We enjoy ourselves so much on the show that
and you have a great day.
Usually run late, and then Ayushi has a terribly late start at work and then gets completely mucked up. But that's what I'm saying. The onus is on me. I'm the one who enjoys myself on the show too much to leave at the scheduled stop time.
So I think now it's best we start scheduling for 7:30 so that we are even before, this 8 a.m. isn't working. We need to do 7:30.
And then we have to, and then usually it takes about like 20 minutes to set up a sound check.
Absolutely.
So that is another...
The exhaustion is real.
It's a whole process. So real. I want COVID to end for so many reasons, of course, on a larger global health, whatever. But also because I just want to be back in the studio because I can't do this anymore.
I swear, I don't want to be setting up everything. Today also, I was like, okay, Rits, we got this. But luckily, it's all sorted. Now I've figured it out. And I'm not even in Bombay or at home right now.
We need to do an episode on selfish.
Selfish?
And yet it's worked out, so that's great. No, I was saying we should do a episode on selfish post-COVID desires. Like, obviously everyone wants the global crisis to end in general, but there's a lot of things that personally people are like, oh, I can't wait for it to be done so I can do this XYZ thing, which, you could put in under the quote of selfish, but really it's not selfish. It's just like, that's your life. You want to get on with your life. It's understandable.
No, of course, everyone has selfish post-COVID desires. Yep. We will do this episode. Or we can...
One of mine is...
What is it?
Mine is just getting back to the studio because I just don't want to do
this. That's my main one also, I swear. But Ayushi, I'm always happy to see you, even if it's second time, third time, 18th time in the same week.
Yeah, of course. That's not part of this. That's just a challenge.
But I have to tell our listeners, since they are our family almost, that Ayushi, I'm a little scared of today because I know she's on edge because she has a hard stop and we have a late tech and all. So now I just am trying to appease her so that she gets happy.
And what she's done is she's said this during the recording. So now, because I am the consummate professional, I will not go completely off bounds. But Rytasha, my sweet, 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 sweet best friend, maybe our post-show text message exchange to each other won't be as kind.
No. It will still be, Janu, I love you. Have the best day, baby. You got this and all. I'll send you poetry from my heart to yours. Ayushi, you are my bunny.
You can send. My phone is suddenly on airplane mode for the rest of the day.
No, that's impossible. You have web WhatsApp. I'm joking. I know Ayushi's life and schedule too well.
Listeners have not tuned in to hear this.
Actually, I'm afraid they have. They love this. They're like this married couple. We want to hear them only doing this. That's fine, guys. So let me just give a little brief about the today's conversation we are about to have.
Yes,
so it's nothing that I thought about, but full credit here goes to our producer, Jalasmi, who big shout out to is a rock star, Ayushi. I'm so happy we now have her on board. And my girl, Jay has made a calendar and she was like, okay, girls, on 21st March is World Poetry Day. I was like, अच्छा जी, ये भी कुछ होता है?
I didn't know that.
मैंने तो कविता, I only thought about Kavita Rajwade. No other kavitas I have thought about in the last many years.
Kavita ki
kavita. Shout out to Kusha Kapila also. Anyway, so then we were like, okay, we got to do this. And why not? Poetry is something I've always been like, what is this? Because I don't have very good memories associated with it. It's all like English class mein kuch na kuch to bakwas sikhaya gaya hai in a bakwas tarika. But Jalasmi was like, we can get a guest.
But modern poetry.
Say.
Continue. No, continue. Jalasmi said, let's get a guest, correct?
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? If there's one person whose poetry or whose understanding or sharing of poetry I can get behind, or even allow myself to dip my toe into this vast pool of poetry, it is. Should I just go for it? Should I just intro her? Is this what's happening now?
Of course, she's here.
Okay, my very dear friend.
And her name is...
That is true. Ladies, gentlemen, and all non-binary folks, I would like to invite on Agla Station Adulthood my very favorite poet, Miss Rabia Kapoor.
Hello.
Woo!
Hello.
Clap, clap, clap.
Oh no, now everyone's frozen. Okay.
No, we were just stunned at your beauty.
No. We were just waiting for you to... Yeah, when the sunlight hit your face, we were like, oh,
this is a poetic moment.
I'm so
and now
sorry.
Carry on.
Rabia, I'm so happy to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here today. I'm so excited.
So Rabia brings a very nice, quiet and calm energy, which is totally in contrast to mine. So I think this episode's going to be very interesting.
There's a lot of different feminine energy on here today.
It's always
That's
exciting.
That is exciting.
Should we just get
Tash, do you want to actually, you know what, we can, because we started this episode, like when we logged on to the call as well, we were having a little chat, like a pre-show check-in, pre-show chat. And then you also just mentioned right now that the world of poetry is so vast and like how to dip our toe, and our association with poetry is so connected to school and ICSE poetry being like 1/3 of your English literature, assessment. Shakespeare, prose, poetry. And the idea was so basic. It was all these old British poets. Like it was just like Wordsworth
Yeats.
and like Robert Frost. And like you had to, even though he's not British, but still. Exactly.
to shout Yeats.
And that's all you did. And it was so masculine. It was so old. And it was again written in a version of English where you needed someone to translate it for you. You needed someone to be like, oh. And then the idea of poetry being this vague, like, it has so many dimensions and the interpretations are open to the reader or the listener and it's whatever you want it to be. But then when it comes to exam time, it's not what you want it to be.
Your teacher wants it to be.
Your teacher told you it is, and what you scribbled on the side of your book. So the idea of poetry is like that. And then you had the advent, I think, of like internet poetry. And I'm sure there's like a whole range of people who are actual serious poets who write books and who recite poetry and are Nobel laureate winning poets. And, lyricists go in sometimes the same bucket as poetry and all of that stuff. But what I was trying to get at is this idea of then we jumped to this new age of, doing poetry on Instagram or doing poetry on like Twitter and doing like these small 5-line, 6-line, not haiku, but not haiku. And it's again, just sometimes I used to think, I was like, this is just a thought that you've pressed the space bar in wherever you wanted.
So Ayushi has a lot of beef with a certain very famous Insta poet. She who will not be named. But Rabia offline will tell you about her. It rhymes with poopy.
But she's she's not a vegan. Let me put it that way.
Can you put it another way?
Her book title is not vegan. At least her book title.
The book title is not vegan, okay, Rabia? You got this.
Her book title is not vegan. That's it.
God. Okay, I get it.
But I am aware that this poetry has connected. Let's put it this way. This kind of poetry has connected with a lot of people, and it's made people feel heard and seen, and they can relate to it. And again, as artists, it's subjective. It's how you connect with it. So I really shouldn't say too much on a public platform. But catch me off.
Even it resonates with me also. I'm at basic audience sometimes. So I love a good bumper sticker poem.
So this bumper sticker poetry.
That's nice.
Yeah, go ahead, Rabia.
Bumper sticker poetry is a lot nicer than Insta poetry. It has more of a ring to it. I think the thing about poets, like all these social media poets and all, is just the accessibility of that they have granted to poetry, which is really nice, because from what little I know about like literature generally historically was such an exclusive party. Like like men, it was just white men, and then it was just, the very elite and the very rich and all of that. So and it still is in a lot of ways, which is so like what you're saying about, being forced to study it in school also is like our privilege. And it is associated with that because it's supposed to be. So in that sense, it's nice that suddenly it's on social media and you have poets like who have just sort of brought to you this idea that you can have something the size of like a shirt pocket that can, take you somewhere else. So, because even personally, I had a lot of issues with a lot of. I have offline. I will go off. I have issues with so many people online, but I have to keep bringing myself back because, like you said, it is so subjective and this and that, and because it has meant something to so many people. It's the same reason you can't shit on pop music at the end of the day, no matter what your personal preferences are, because it has like gotten someone through something.
Yeah.
It's pop poetry.
I listen to The Weeknd on repeat now.
No, and in fact, the best thing that I heard about, like, not the best thing I heard, my mother said this to me when I was like, this is such a basic song. She was like, pop stands for popular, right? And if you have a problem with popular, take that up with the definition of the word. Wow. I was like, so much attack. But also, yes, that's true. At a certain time, the songs that we thought were cool, that I think are cool now, like I'm like, oh, I'm so into Sting. Sting was once on the top 40 charts, right? For someone else. Yeah. Exactly. So you're right. This is like, you can't shit on pop music, and maybe that's kind of what it is. It's like pop poetry.
Did
you say that God, right now? Rabia, look at you. Firstly, for our listeners who don't know, and for Ayushi who also may not know, Rabia, give some info about yourself, na? तुम क्या करती हो, क्या पढ़ के आई हो, अभी fresh दुनिया में आई हो, adulthood की. Tell us what's going on.
You just called Ayushi out for no reason.
No, not that way.
It's the second time on it. Second time.
I'm so scared for after recording.
Anyway.
No, come
not
on,
that
Rabia,
way,
tell
but
us.
just give us some context
you?
of the world you are in right now. How you, what? Tell us.
So, I hate these kinds of questions because I don't know. I'm here. I've been around. I don't know. I studied actually, like, when you're talking about school and also, I'll just take it from there. I guess I'm really lucky because I never had that kind of schooling. I'm also like, I'm 23, so I'm a little younger. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. But I went to a school that had like an alternative education system. So we were from day one, a lot of our teaching happened with stories. So we were taught math through stories about these four men. One of them loved, if you gave him anything, he would add more to it. So he was Addy Singh. Then we had Saptra Singh, Sher Singh, and Malta Singh. So these...
I am here for this.
That's how we were taught math. Yeah, so that was
cute.
In the first grade. Then in kindergarten also, like, and I went back to Tridha. This is my school. I went back after I graduated because I had sort of realized that, oh my God, storytelling, this is what I'm doing. And oh my God, my school, this is perfect for my school. I want to go and talk to students about this. I was like 18, but I really wanted to do this. And they put me in like the kindergarten for some reason where I could do nothing except like have kids sit on me and like pull my hair and stuff. But it was really nice because in kindergarten, all you do is you play, you run around and stuff, you fall asleep. And then when you wake up, your teacher tells you a story. And that's the last thing. You get like a 10-minute story session and then you go home or something like that. And those stories, I realized, and they're the same stories that I heard 15 years ago. And I think they will be the same like 15 years later. The point of the story is that it cannot have a moral, and it has no narrative in that sense. So like there's a boy, his mother told him that there's a fruit that has a star in the middle of it. So he climbs up a hill and there's an apple tree and he eats the apple and there's a star in it. That's the whole story. So this idea of, of not preaching, of of helping you find your own journey was the school's basic philosophy. So that's what I've grown up in Bombay. And so for me, even realizing that I like writing and poetry and all of that has been through on those terms, very different from like what you guys described. So I think and English teachers are like amazing. So I always had good English teachers, and that's kind of what took me to studying literature in college. And my literature teacher from like high school, I studied at BIS, is like my hero. She's amazing. This has just become about my school teacher.
Are you mad? But that's where the seed has been sown, Rabia.
No, but it's so important. Yeah, for sure.
I realized in an interview that like
I think in its...
See.
No.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I was just saying like teachers, like they do influence what and where your perception of a subject goes, right? Like if you had a really, like I think we had very good teachers in college that made you want to study certain things more. Whereas in school, you had teachers that you didn't always dislike. Like there was a little difference in the way that it was like in school. You're like, oh, I don't mind sitting through this class because she's good. She's good at what she does. And I don't hate learning this. Whereas sometimes later in life, as you grow up, you encounter teachers that make you excited to get to class and to that seat. And those are the kind of, like, I think that makes all the difference in how you, like what subjects you kind of find yourself like endeared towards perhaps. And say for a lot of children who go into a path of literature and writing and poetry and all of that, that's so important that it was inculcated or supported at a young age at least.
Yeah, agreed. I was also thinking about what you said earlier on about like the space of poetry being, in your school and all. It was so masculine and all of that, and that's also why maybe there was such a huge disconnect. And I was thinking about that. Like for me, Prithvi Theatre has these summertime workshops, and I used to go for those every year when I was a kid, like till I was about 14 years old. And I went for one workshop, which was a poetry workshop when I was 10 years old, and it was conducted by Sampurna Chatterjee, who is a poet. And she was my introduction to it. So I think it was handed to me, like my first introduction to it was also by a woman and her perspective on it as a woman who was a poet, and, the way that she thought of words. And the whole workshop was just this, about thinking about words. Gibberish words and how you can give meaning to it, and real life words and how you can change the meaning of that. And so since that was such a like turning point for me, because since that workshop when I was 10 years old, that has been my association with language. Like she just made it so tasty.
Yummy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It blows my mind. Even like the kind of trust, Tridha, your school puts in the intelligence of the kids to be like, you will figure it out. I feel like content at large in our country is just dumbing us down further and further. And me also, as woke and progressive and whatever, all this bullshit that I am, I also feel like, but what is the moral of the story? We have to leave them with a moral. And I just shot for something recently in which we had to write our own scripts. And I was like, but what's the social message? And a lot of people there told me it doesn't always have to have one, and people can figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, even I've been like thinking about that a lot, about, especially today, like how controversial can I just talk?
Yeah, of course, this is a safe space.
Okay, cool. But this is actually not, but India, the state that we're in right now, in terms of censorship and all of that, and because of the circles that we navigate, there's such a hyper awareness right now of what you can talk about and what you can't talk. And I think there are a lot of people now who, like, in a normal world would not talk about political things or write political things, but now that you're not allowed to, it's like now, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to write this and all of that. And the thing is that, so I of course think it's awful that there are these censorships and Amazon has gone through what it's going through and all of that. But I was talking to my dad about it also, and the little silver lining in it is that people will have to be smarter about the content that they create now. You can't just have a show where there's character A says this is bad and character B says, oh, I know what you mean. You know, like it can't be that anymore. And because everything you do, everything you say is political on its own. Like you don't have to have a social message at the end of it. Because the way you dress, the way you speak, you know, the way you, as cheesy as that sounds, treat each other, all of this is political. Especially in our country where, you know, there are so many divides, there is so much complexity in everything. So just tell the stories of people and you're being political.
That's so true.
So that was an exciting way of looking at it.
Yes. That's really true though. Like, I like that idea of like the content's going to get smarter, because I think, Tash, you and I have had that idea, maybe not so well verbalized, but we have discussed how, well, if you can't, like, it's so sad. And again, I 100% endorse what you're saying in terms of like, this is hot, like censorship at this level, and to get into this again and again, it's frustrating, it's wrong, it's immoral, it's not part of what you would think of free democracy's ethos is. Agreed. But also it's on the same vein, like what you said, it's like, we seem to have just this repetitive content again and again, where it's just the same message that you're saying in the same direct way because character A said it to character B, and then they had a fight, and now the show is about the establishment versus a gangster, or a gangster versus the establishment, and it's just these circles going round and round. And you're right. I mean, maybe this is. But see, again, I'm scared to say this. I am physically scared right now to say this because I don't know how this will be interpreted by saying that, forget it. I like it. Forget it. You can cut that also.
Wow. Yeah.
Coming back to poetry and Rabia's foray into this space, which most of us kind of avoid. It's also a very small niche market in terms of young people wanting to do it. Tell us about your first poem, Rabia. It's a basic question. Let's start there.
So there are two first poems. The first was that I wrote when I was 10 years old, that got the ball with Sampurna Chatterjee. And the second was the first spoken word poem that I wrote that sort of led to the social media. My entry. That's when you went viral,
basically.
Yeah, that was with my first spoken word poem. That was really exciting and very bizarre because I can't say that I have it so much anymore because I do it so much, but I had excruciating stage fright because I've always been a very shy person, to the extent that when I was young I would refuse to meet my own friends because it was such a daunting prospect. But one of my friends signed me up for this spoken word, this open mic sort of thing, and it was like, I read your blog's great, you should go and perform. And I was like, okay. But I didn't have anything, so I opened this blank document, and that's kind of just what the poem was. The poem literally starts with, I don't have anything to say that hasn't been said before. I just like to write, and I would like someone to listen, and I've never been heard before. Like, those are the opening lines of the poem that I wrote when I was 18.
All of 18, and Rabia has done this poem and put it up, and I've watched it, and it's about being an introvert, no?
Yeah.
And I was just like, Yeah.
I'm so sad because I think I peaked at 18. Like, that seems to be my magnum opus, the introvert's banter.
No. And in one of your other poems yesterday when I was watching, you said that I'm 23 and past my prime. Rabia.
That was a very,
Rabia. It's not even started yet. Like, I can't wait to see the things you do in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God, like even just you're 23, we're 5 to 6 years, just a little bit ahead of you. And how many times we have recontemplated where life is going to go and reconfigured, like, oh, this is going to be my compass, or this is going to be my starting point. The amount of times we have decided, no, this year I start, or this month, this new idea is the start. So 23,
but we've all felt it, of course. We feel it all the time because of the nature of this world and the internet and life and the pressure on young people, especially, sorry.
Yeah, there is a lot of pressure. And the minute this idea of going viral hits, and you're like, oh, I need to just keep chasing either that high, or the expectation for me is to meet that level of performance, that level of success, that level of relatability. Like relatability has become a commodity now, right? So that entire thing, the minute you're not relatable, you're not relevant. And to keep chasing that is so much stress, it's so much pressure. But it's fine that you feel it now. Feel it, wallow in it, art will come from it.
Yeah, it's like Rockstar.
As it has been.
I'm Rabia Kapoor.
Yeah,
this is my struggle.
Listen, just embrace the narcotics.
Yes.
Embrace the liquor.
Embrace
the late nights.
That's the thing, like on one hand, it's awful, like coming out of university and then back to Bombay and all of that was for the first few months was really difficult, because suddenly it was like, you're never not a student, when you're a kid. Like every year, you have the safety of the next graduation.
You are on the right podcast to be discussing this. Ayushi and I are always grappling with this only.
Yeah.
Because when you've lived so many different lives, and then you come back and you're supposed to fit right back into the one that you had when you were 18, and you're like, I don't fit in this space anymore. It's too tight.
It was really difficult. So for me, also I studied abroad, and then when I came back to Bombay, which is like the love of my life, I adore this city, and I always have, and it's been my biggest writing point and all of that. To come back to Bombay and to feel so unwelcome in that city, to feel like the city is rejecting you, felt like a double betrayal. Because on one hand, I don't know what I'm doing with my life right now. And then on the other hand, to have this city that has been your everything, to also be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing here? It's just like, please, you are all I have right now. So that was very difficult for the first... how many months has it been? At least the first 3 months that I was back, it was very difficult. Also, to come back home in COVID times, so you don't even really have your friends.
You've had a whole new situation.
Oh,
Ayushi, she's fresh off the boat. Abhi.
Oh, sweet Rabia, I want to give you a hug. It's gonna suck. It's gonna so suck for the rest of the year.
It's gonna be great.
Why? I'm not lying. It was so hard.
No, it's so much nicer to know that though.
I wouldn't.
Post-college depression is real.
No,
I also came back from college and then for 6
months
I was just sad. Yeah. Normalize it.
Yeah.
Dude, and the worst is if you've come back in a slightly non-conventional way. Like I came back 2 years after everyone else in my class had come back and graduated, because I did a little all over the place studying and then came to it. So I came back after a lot of our class had already moved back. They had re-assimilated, they had re-socialized, they had found groups and grooves. And obviously a lot of the social lines and divides had merged and blurred. So I could not even understand the social landscape of my friends, of my social life when I came back. And I didn't know how to reintroduce myself into life. And on top of that, it's like first job time, first salary time. Then you're moving back home with your parents, which is a whole other layer of what is happening? I had out-of-body experiences where I was like, I have lost control of the dimensions of my life. I do not know what the dimensions are anymore. I don't know how much more this fabric can be stretched. It was a struggle, and I would hate for anyone to think that it's not going to be difficult. It is so hard. And the added thing of when you've been privileged enough to study in another country and you've had all that exotic fun experiences, it's all open and everything is I do whatever I want. But yeah, dude, if you're just back and that too COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck.
So that's where that poem came out of, actually, Rytasha, the one you're talking about, the 23 and already past your prime.
Yeah.
Which is, I think my dad said something like, or I think my dad came into my room and I was like, that's enough. I've had enough. No, it wasn't that extreme. But, because you're just so used to having...
I'm just imagining Rajat's face right now.
It was like, Rabi. And I'm just like, no, this is too much for me.
But it's so cool that something like that triggered you to write. Inspired you to write. Inspired you to write something so, again, relevant to so many people.
What's it called? The poem, I'm 23 and past my... It has a different title. I used to think I was special. Is that the one? Yes.
Yeah.
And Rabia, now I just want to talk about your delivery also. Because that is one of the things which blows me away the most personally. You write these words so beautifully in combinations that one would never think of. And they are so simple and yet so like, wow, how you write like that. And then you deliver them with the most relaxed, cool, but I know inside how you're feeling. I can see that also.
You can see it in my hands.
I can see all of that nervous energy, all of it inside you. But then when your mouth opens and you speak, it's usually always in this voice. And you take your pauses and you say your words. And talk to me about that. What is your process as an artist?
I really enjoy it. And I'm also very anti. I think from day one, when I wrote the introvert piece and when I performed it, my one rule to myself was that I don't want to do what I've seen in terms of slam poetry and spoken word and all that, because I think it wasn't for me.
Yeah, let's put it like
aesthetic.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't like that aesthetic. I didn't like the very dramatic pauses and the big thing of social messaging coming back to that, like that I'm writing a poem about womanhood and periods and, for me, it was, because it's true, that is also true, but it didn't feel authentic to me. And I have grown up with theatre, and so I've always had this I've always been enamored by the idea of the stage. I've always, imagined myself on the stage and, talking to audiences the way I've seen you guys doing it, literally. And because Rytasha is also, I've seen her on stage a lot.
I've known Rabia since I was 23 and she was 18.
Oh
so
my
now
God.
You are 23 and it's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like a grandma moment for you, Tash. Like, wow,
Yeah,
seeing my
God.
child grow up.
This has been such an emotional morning. It's only 9 a.m.
Yeah, really. I've cried once already.
I know. So much. I was looking at Tash. I was like, it is not even 9 a.m. Tash.
But yeah, so for me, this was such a great opportunity, like apart from the stage fright and all, to sort of mix these two things that I love so much. Like I love this idea of the stage and that you can go on the stage and everyone will listen to you for like 5 minutes. And for me, as someone who's shy, who's pretty soft-spoken most of the time, I used to have dreams where I was talking and no one would hear me. And I'd just be shouting and being like, hello, and no one would hear me. And those dreams stopped after I started spoken word, interestingly enough. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So it was a really cool way to sort of merge this thing of the stage and writing, for me. And I wanted to I like, even in theatre and all, I really like when people just talk to you, because I feel like there's a sense of, first of all, you're not treating your audience like they're idiots. You're talking to them very much on the same level. And because it just sounds nicer to me. Like these people have come to have some kind of conversation with you. So I want to have a conversation with them. And a lot of what I write is very personal in some ways. And I just want to talk to you about it. I don't want to make it into anything, like it's not a big deal. I don't think I'm a big deal. So let's not go into that space. So, and there is a rhythm that conversation has that we have when we talk, especially as Indians with our accent and our, intonations and all that. Like, I enjoy that a lot. I always have. So even in my spoken word, like there's a lot of I always memorize them because I don't like reading off pages and all. I always do memorize them, but I make a lot of room in the way that they're written and in that I could improvise. That if I stuttered, it would be a part of the piece. That if I needed to change something around while I was doing it, it would be fine. I don't like performing one piece the same way the second time, So yeah,
because no two performances are ever the same anyway. So
anyway,
so
and
nice.
Again, growing up with the kind of theater that I've watched and how I've seen the actors have so much fun with the fact that there is this sort of space to play. You're on stage. Like, the main difference between the screen and stage is that you have the opportunity to change it up. Like, why would you not take that opportunity? So that's what it is. And that's, I like long pauses to break the rhythm, because
and as an audience, I also love them because we're not used to them in the way you deliver them.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what? You're welcome. But thank you, honestly, for giving your voice to this world. Anyway, enough about that. You say what you were saying.
Who? Ayushi?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not saying anything. I'm enjoying this between two performing artists. No, not Lel.
So,
I mean, not Lel. That's not something that's in my wheelhouse. So I wouldn't want to comment. I'm just enjoying listening to it.
When you write, Rabia, I want to know, like, is it something that sparks off a thought and then you open your Word doc and then you start typing? Or what is that? Like that only?
So, that guy now, George R. Martin.
Yes.
Yeah, I tell this to everybody. One of my friends who's this amazing writer, his name's Ayan, and I love him because I was at one of these spoken word things and he wrote this poem called Mediocre Man, which he performed. And if you think I'm awkward on stage, like, you have to see this guy. Like, he didn't let people react when he was performing because it threw him off. So he was like, his hand was shaking and he was just like, please don't snap for me, kind of thing. Like, he was amazing. And his piece is called Mediocre Man, which is essentially about a superhero whose superpower is being mediocre. And it was amazing.
I love it.
This whole country.
Yeah. He's like, you can't spell mediocre without me. Like, that's it's awful.
But that's so funny, Tash. We've spoken about, right? Yeah. What's wrong with being average? Why have we did this at, like, I think over a year and a half ago now when we started, we really wanted to deconstruct this idea of why it's so important suddenly for everyone to be like a effing overachiever constantly in every sphere of your life. Like, even with dal chawal now, you have to make it like a burrito bowl. It's like, dude, calm the fuck down. But it's like, we were talking about, why is it that we've, robbed people from being average? Like, why is it that you can't be, because the average man or woman is working, trying to provide and trying to create a happy, sustainable, healthy family. What is so wrong with that idea? And I want to look at this mediocre man because I think it was such a good, I sometimes almost feel it's insulting to people who are in the daily grind to constantly tell them that you are not enough, that what you are doing is not enough, when what they're doing is actually superhero. It is. You just surviving day to day and doing it for yourself and your family, if you have one, or whoever the community around you is. That is Herculean sometimes. Like, it really is.
And then you have, like, these spaces where people can create, like, people who paint or people who write or people who sing, etc., it's a respite from that. What you just described, it's respite. And now, because of Instagram, and honestly, I love Instagram. I think it's such a cool platform, and like the things that it's done and all that. Yeah, like, I don't want to shit on social media because I adore it, and it has so many positives if you're willing to
absolutely,
sort of go that way. But because people do only put up things that they're excited about on there, like, I made this drawing and I it's so exciting. I'm like a small child who shows their parents every doodle that they make, so here there's a picture of it, you can also see it and tell me how nice it is. But that has slowly evolved into this thing of only putting out the best things that you do, and those highlights, are very easy to as an audience to take it as the regular. So if everyone else is doing this, why can't I? And we know this. I know it's a very talked about thing, but it is sad that something as simple as like taking a piece of paper and drawing, which is something we did so much growing up. Now as soon as you do it, you think, oh, I could put this up and I could make this into stickers and I could sell this. It's so tiring to even go through that train of thought. And I keep now, yeah.
It's
we are shaking.
You're so right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm relatable girl. Relatable.
Yeah. So recently I've been trying to sort of unlearn that. I don't know if that's the right word. But to sort of, like even in terms of writing, I realize that anything that I write, I have to think of a platform that I can put it up on. And I want to stop doing that because I used to write like entire short stories and just keep them on the computer, or in a notebook and all. And I was so satisfied with that. I want to go back to that somehow, like practice that, just doing it really only for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, which is like damn hard. Like now I'm like, do I work out for myself or do I work out so I can post it on Instagram and tag my trainer being like I did it?
Yeah.
And I don't know the right answer anymore. Rabia, you have opened up a whole box of Pandora's existential questions within me.
I know, I'm so sorry.
No, this is why I love you.
But this is a relationship, I think people, the minute you start becoming more self-aware, and I would like to put the three of us in that box right now, even though I've just gotten to know you, I think a lot of people who have a creative-ish mind are hyper self-aware.
So what Rabia calls it is self-conscious,
we're like,
as
I'm
in conscious
so
of the self.
The self.
And she says this in one of her poems.
Girl, Ayushi, I really need to look into your poetry.
Her.
I'm thinking you're talented. No, of course. I watched the
Okay, Rabia, you know what?
piece,
We're going to have a
which
whole
was-
conversation about the 2 a.m. piece. And maybe, yeah, sure, let's take a break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Siet Tires and The Whole Truth Foods. We really appreciate your support. So, on Cyrus Says, Sagarika Ghosh, journalist, columnist, author, discusses books she has written, her experiences from reporting about the Babri Masjid demolition back in the day, and the upcoming state election. Cyrus also had a great episode with Devdutt Patnaik last week. Do check that out. Chuck narrates an interesting story about a company that shared its virtual expertise with other companies and empowered the virtual world. No, we're not going to tell you what the brand is, but go check out The Origin of Things. And Chuck also came back on Simplified this week from episode 200 onwards. He's back. Go check that out if you haven't had a chance to do so far. The Habit Coach Ashton was joined by Sapna Gopalkrishnan, his co-trekker on Mount Kilimanjaro. They recollect the trek's memories and Sapna talks about the challenges she faced. On All Things Policy, Rachit Sheth talks to Sarthak Pradhan about Delhi's water crisis. This is due to the pollution of its major water source, the river Yamuna, and he discusses the case against the state of Haryana. We had Manish Dangi, Chief Investment Officer of the Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund, on Paisa Vaisa with Anupam Gupta. They discussed India's financial report card with reference to the past decade, the hits and misses, and what the future of investing is going to look like. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back. We're in conversation with the poet, guru of my life, question asker, Rabia Kapoor and Ayushi. Hi.
That's true. And the description that you just gave, you don't know which is which, Dash. Who is your guru? Who is the poet? Who is the person in your life? I am the poet. And I don't even know it. It's the best. That's it. That couplet of you can put anything in and then something poet, don't even know it. Or don't I know it? I think every single person in the world has written that to somebody and then laughed to themselves.
Yeah. You're so clever.
Rabia, you started this Spacebar Magazine recently also, no?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk to us about that, please? Because I feel like our listeners need to get involved because that's where I found my most favorite poem of recent times, which I will narrate later.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I think I know which one you're talking about.
Of course, you know which one. Yes, and I shared it that day only and Ayushi is telling me I sent it to you. And I'm like, I shared on my story.
No, dude, I didn't find it on your story.
Oh.
I found it on Instagram scrolling and I remember seeing it and I sent it to the chats and then a few days later you had posted it on your story and I was like, it's come back to me through the universe.
Okay.
It's brought it back.
It's okay, you know what?
Have I misremembered this?
Who found the cool stuff? But I was just like to credit Rabia. She found it first and I found it through her. Anyway, talk to us.
Once again, this is the third strike of you attacking me on air. I'm just counting, Rytasha.
I'm scared for my life, listeners. Please reach out to my parents if you, I'm threatened.
Rytasha, you got chopped.
Chopped.
Okay, but now let's chop right back. Spacebar. What about it? Tell us more.
So Spacebar was born out of a collective existential crisis that me and my college friends were having. So we all graduated
Love it.
2020, August? And July, August, like that. And it was a year of really doing a lot and feeling a lot of stress, and at the same time not really doing anything and giving yourself a pass because we're going through a lot. So you really just weren't doing anything. So it was a very weird space to be in. And so I just sort of impulsively messaged my friends and I was like, what if we just did this? Because first of all, it'll be a great way for us to keep in touch because we're all from different countries and all of that. So that's really nice because we meet up on Zoom every few weeks and we talk about all the stuff we've been working on and all, which is nice. On the other hand, it was also because I and these people that I'm doing the magazine with, we have very specific tastes in art generally, and so Spacebar is actually it's slow consumption. Like we don't want to be a part of that thing. We have to constantly be putting out content to be relevant, like that. Yeah. So we're very anti that in that sense. So we want to have just a very highly curated space, like in terms of just art that's been thought about, that's been given attention, that hasn't just been, not just the first draft or something. Because I know that, so as someone who writes and as someone who has even done a little bit of teaching, given a lot of guidance to people who want to write and all that, I know that the first draft is where you want to sort of stop because there's this fear that the second draft will be shit. Or the thing that, it's so much work, I just don't want to do it. I really like what this is. This was so raw and so honest and all that. But I have, over the past few years, realized that, you have to give your work enough respect, to offer it a second draft. You cannot just leave it at the first draft because that is just the rough sort of skeleton of the piece, You have to love your work enough to give it that much time and attention and, take it where it needs to be. Your second draft might be shit, but that's what the third draft is for. And you always have your first draft to go back to, best and the worst part of being an artist is that there is always room for improvement.
And I needed to hear this the most, I feel, because I'm very haan, theek hai, ho gaya. It was real and honest. Let's just put it. It's done.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm the same. It takes a lot to move past that. So Spacebar was kind of born out of this space that let's give it that time and attention and then put something out, So that's what it is. And it's been a lot of fun. We put out our first issue in January and it was very exciting. And we actually got all these amazing artists and all to collaborate. And so why we called it Spacebar is because we wanted to just explore different ideas of space in any sort of interpretation of the word space. So our first issue is about the relationship that inside spaces have with outside spaces. And you can interpret that however you want. The second one is about vision. That's the theme. And vision in terms is just what your eye goes to, what kind of spaces you're drawn to, what you like to see, what you don't like to see, a sunset or just something that you briefly glimpsed and has stayed with you or hasn't stayed with you. So things like that. So that's what our second issue is about. So that's Spacebar. It's a lot of fun.
That's so cool. And where can people...
It's on Instagram.
I mean, not to sound so pluggy, but where can people find... No, but it's on Instagram. Is it in other places or is it just there right now?
It's on Instagram is where we sort of put out our calls for submissions and art that we like and extracts from posts that from our work. But we also have a website, which is linked in the bio of the thing. It's called spacebar.com. So you can...
For sure. I'm sure people will.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be people who want to write in and contribute and stuff like that. If specifically given the fact that you're the way you described it, it seems like a more nurturing or a kinder space for your
I would
art
like to think so. Because we are also, all of us are so young and we're all trying to make it in, these different fields of the arts and stuff. And yeah, so I edited the last issue. I didn't do a very good job of it. It was very stressful. But it was so if we got a pitch that we liked, we talked to them about what we liked about it. And then I tried to get on calls with them to discuss it, to discuss their drafts and all that. And then we kept going back and forth. And It was really nice. As someone who wants to write also, it's nice, like editing other people's work or like giving feedback and all is also such a big part of.
It's an extension of your art also now to be able to do this. I think it's really lovely, and to get more people involved and build the community, which Ayushi and I so often talk about. Community is key.
Oh, agreed.
This is kind of like almost, I mean, it's not the same at all, but it's sometimes what she was saying kind of reminded me of like the idea of what we were talking about, having the collective dash of having a space where you create and submit art that's okay with you. That, I mean, of course, I do believe in editorial oversight. I do. I think it's important because I'm quite a structured person that way in terms of the way I approach life. But we've always had this idea of where you could have a space to share art that wasn't necessarily created to fit an issue or to fit a narrative or to fit like, this is the time of the year that you publish this stuff. Because it's election week, it's Diwali week, it's budget week. Content is usually tailored around a calendar. And that's not to say that our podcast doesn't follow a calendar. We also take cognizance of the fact that Valentine's Day deserves a dating episode. That's not to say that that's not part of it. But we had this, and I think it's something that we've always thought of, like, one day we'll do it. And, but having that space, like you said, it's important. It's nice. And I like the idea of slow art. Because, like, we think of like slow travel, slow culture, slow food, and that's slow fashion. So I think slow art is, and guys, but isn't it just so frustrating sometimes and so ironic that what actually slow art is what art was at its formation? That we have now gone so far from the definition of these things that to pull it back to here, we've had to coin up new ideas of what it actually was. Like, to say that something is slow food, I was reading an article on slow food. It's like to be mindful of what you're making, what you're eating, to think that, my mother made this and how did she make it and what was her narrative and all. And sometimes I was thinking, I was like, of course, but what you've described is the idea of a woman cooking for her family back when women used to be in the kitchen. And that was the entire range of what she was supposed to do. And I'm not saying that that's something problematic with slow food. I'm just saying that we have gone backwards. Like, to find simplicity, I think we've had to pull it back to so far back to a time. And it's like, what did we do? Like, how did we get here? Like, why did we go so crazy after Bon Appetit videos that now when you make nachos, you have to write about your abuelita, and how she made nachos. And that's not to say that your grandmama in Mexico didn't make good nachos. See, you have to, every time you say something, you have to put a little counter in it to make sure that somebody else isn't offended. So I think space that lets art be itself, that's nice. I hope that it flourishes.
I agree also. Like, I was actually talking about this yesterday. Like, also the last thing that you said, where we've reached this point. There are two kinds of, when you say politically correct, now I realized that there are two strains of it. One is, this thing where you're so afraid or so hyper about this idea of political correctness that you can't have an open discussion about anything because someone will take it the wrong way and all of that. And then the other side of it is just ignorance. And, so I was talking about this yesterday because so basically that, where people will be like, South Bombay, there's this huge thing, the way they talk, where they just say, oh my God, you're such a slave. They're like, stop saying that and say, oh my God, I'm so tired of this political correct bullshit. Like, that's very different, Like, you should be able to talk about things. You should be able to discuss things. I don't know. I just went off on that. But yeah.
In agreement with you on that also. And we'll have a separate episode about that. The problems of privilege.
Yeah.
Guys, it's not just always the fault of, privilege. Sometimes it's like even normal words that people used to use when we were young in school, whether it was my school or whether it was a school that's in a less privileged era, there were words that we used that today those words hold power and meaning.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The problem of privilege is that and yet you continue to use the words.
Yes.
That's the F up over there, I think. It's like everyone had some version of a word that was okay to say then and now isn't. what language, caste, community,
But if you're educated enough, you should not.
class
anyway.
it was part of is open. It moves up and down. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm saying the privileged part is that you still continue to use those words today when you know that you shouldn't. That's kind of my
I
thing.
wanted to ask you, Rabia, as a 23-year-old fresh out of college now, what are you excited about? What are you scared of? What are you hopeful for in the upcoming stations of adulthood?
It's a really...
Plug.
I just come out of nowhere with segues, actually. I don't give a fuck about flow. I'm like, theek hai, chalo.
Yeah, I'm bored of this. Let's move on.
Strike 4. Is this strike 4? No. Come on, tell us, Rabia. Future
As a
outlook.
real baby adult.
Yeah, really. Oh my God, like I'm sweating now. No, it's actually like, I think I come from a family that's extremely, they're very, even when they're not, they're very optimistic people, you know. So that has sort of seeped through. So, and they're both artists. Like my dad's a filmmaker, theater maker, whatever, actor, writer. My mom's a photographer. She does production design. Like she loves detail and she gets so excited about like doorknobs, for example. Like, and my brother also, like he decided he wants to learn music and now he's playing like 4 instruments. Like, you know, they're all those kinds of people. So that's the mindset. So, you know, like as people who are artists, you're always, no matter how much despair there is or how lost you feel, there's always an excitement of, like you said earlier, I'll use this for my art, you know? So in that sense, it's really exciting being 23 and feeling so lost and feeling so anxious about the future and really not knowing. Because like I was saying earlier, like in school, I'm in the 4th grade. No matter what happens, I know that this time next year, I'll be in the 5th grade, you know, and there's so much comfort to that. It's such a beautiful thing. But to now be out of uni for 6 months, and 3 months ago, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. Now I'm working on a film set. 3 months later, I just don't know where I'll be. And it's very daunting, but it's also just really, it's really exciting to have that. So my 20s that way, 3 years into my 20s, I can't complain, you know, like I will in my spoken word poems, but it is super cool also. And to be, again, like you were saying, like we are so privileged that worst case scenario, we'll have to live in our parents' house and deal with coming in whenever they feel like it, you know? So it's nice. It's nice to be able to fall and keep getting up. And, you know, every time you fall, you're falling somewhere else. It's very exciting. That's what I've reached now. Like I was not here 3 months ago. But yeah. And I want to write. I have a lot of ideas for writing. And so poetry was so accidental. It's not actually what I want to do necessarily as a writer, like primarily. Rytasha.
You get used to it. You get used to it.
You know, once on Instagram, this is one of the first times I saw Rytasha cry. So she was talking about something on Instagram and she just started bawling and I was like, oh my God, like, wow, she must feel really... And I told my dad, you know, I was just like, you know, because Rytasha knows, my dad knows Rytasha. So, you know, she was saying this thing and she just started crying. Papa's like, she cries for everything. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
Oh my God, I used to go for rehearsal and cry also. No, that's why he used to see me crying all the time.
I knew I wasn't part of the reason. It is now for this one line. None of his other work matters. This one line should write everything.
I hate him.
I love him.
Yeah, but I have a lot of ideas.
Yeah. I can't wait to see. Yeah.
That's exciting though. That's so... And also I think to your credit, and again, because of that self-conscious young adult feeling, is that as a 23-year-old, it's so good that you have that optimism to know that wherever you fall, maybe it's a different place, but you'll get up and you'll start again from there. Because sometimes it's not so easy to see that when you're in it. Like moving back when... I'm trying to think of like when I was 22, 23, I was not so sure about unsureness. Like, that
uncertainty, you have embraced it.
You seem to be
which
more
is nice.
That's in this
Yes,
moment at like 9 a.m.
nice.
on a Thursday morning. I don't know where I'll be.
Yeah.
There has also been a lot of self-pity, like, which I am trying to sort of,
I love to throw pity soirees for myself regularly.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, I'll be stuck in traffic and I'll be like, why me? This is just too much for me. And like, why? Just shut up.
But you're right. I feel like I should tell the listeners the conversation that I had on PVFFs 2 days ago, I think, where I had a little bit of a mishap at work, and it resulted in just me having to sit with lots of tissue paper in my pants, basically. And I was so upset. And I'm 29 years old. Like, I have, honestly, I have a grip
on your womanly activities. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't complain about this stuff, quite honestly, because I'm like, it is what it is. Now, fuck it. But that day, I just felt so sorry for myself. I have texted reams to my group chats being like, and at the end was like, guys, I'm feeling so sorry for myself. And I need to be told that you also feel sorry for me.
I think it's okay sometimes. Yeah, indulge.
And yeah, of course. So I'm saying it's fine to feel it's silly and you get over it, because immediately you're like, what am I even saying? But it happens, dude. It happens all the time. I think even our parents, sometimes something happens and they must be looking and being like, why us? Why? I think they sometimes look at kids. Like, I think my parents definitely look at my brother and me sometimes and go like, why? We trained you specifically not to do this. And yet you have done this to me.
Especially Desi parents. Like, definitely. We have been so good.
We asked you.
Another episode. A whole other episode. Again, guys. Bringing it back.
Actually, Rabia, we should speak to you once every couple
she
months.
She is our
so
marker of baby adult. So like this 5-year gap is perfect.
You've given us 4 episodes today.
Before we wrap this up, I just want to ask you to give us and our listeners some recommendations. If we're afraid to read poetry, get into the world of it. Where do we start? What's easy? What's accessible?
Okay. So there is this one spoken word poem that I really, really, really love. It's called Ode to the Women on Long Island, Olivia Gatwood. And you just have to see it because it goes back to that, there's a spoken word thing where they talk like this and this. She just completely puts that aside. She becomes different characters. It's so good. I listen to it like once a week. It's so good. It's really, really good.
I think it's time, say, Ayushi.
No, I actually thought before we wrap up, even though I have been the keenest to get away, not from this conversation, but to work, is just that, if it wouldn't be too much to put you on the spot on this, Rabia, may we request you for a narration of a couple lines or of a poem or something that you would like to share with us? It can be something that you've already put out there, just so the listeners get
something new also, that you've not put any.
Something tasty words.
No, I can read something from Many Nights.
Yes, which is, my favorite new poem.
So for YouTube, they changed the name to 2 a.m. text, but actually it's called Many Nights.
They wanted to make it more clickbaity, na?
So I found it as 2 a.m.
So that's a whole other episode.
That really is episode 5. Clickbait ka zamana jo chal raha hai. Okay, come Rabia, go.
So, anyway. But should I read like the beginning part or should I just read from the middle?
You want to read your favorite bits or whatever you want?
You're the artist.
I'll just read the first 2 things. Okay. I spend many nights imagining you imagining me. Is it vain to wonder what you're wondering when you wonder about me? Am I self-absorbed when I think about what you think about when you think about touching me? Is it narcissism when I realize that looking into your mind is like looking into mine? And that all I want is to keep staring into that mirror where you and I are reflected in each other. I spend many nights with my eyes open, glued to the darkness of my bedroom ceiling, where scenarios play out like a thin layer of film under my eyelashes, foggy with daydreams and seeping into night dreams. And I dream a little about you, and I dream a little about me. And my dreams, they morph us together. And I want to know, is that conceited? Is it conceited that I have rearranged the furniture of my mind to all be facing that big projector where I play reruns of your fingers running up and down the length of me, burying themselves in the arch of my back, losing themselves in the tangles of my hair, and then finding themselves once more in the gaps between my own. That's the opening of the...
Well, you have just made me... My God. That has taken me back to a place that I didn't even know existed in.
Yeah,
Great.
I wrote this when I was 19,
Thanks.
so it's very much that headspace of...
But at 28, I'm still in the same headspace. I just want to say
True, Yeah.
There's so much, it's so funny. We're recording on the day that the other episode is going to come out, but Crush, I think the Crush episode comes out today. And we just spoke about how when we were younger, all of these emotions were constantly like our guiding force every time we had a crush and all of that stuff. So thank you.
And fake scenarios. Everyone's doing fake scenarios, which is great.
Fake scenarios, yeah. Sun signs, compatibility.
I still do flames. No, I don't. Joking.
Dude,
I'm normal.
I think that's a personal strike 5. I have to cut you. This show is now just me. On that note, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Rabia. This was
so
lovely.
much fun.
And I think Tash is right. Talking to a young adult is so good. And
it's inspiring
not to sound
also.
old.
And honestly, we have changed so much in the last 5 years and so much shit has happened that you can't help but feel a bit jaded. So it's so nice to talk to you and feel 23 again.
I was thinking it from even a more granny perspective. I was like, oh my God, if this is what young people are doing and are feeling and thinking now, I think I have a lot more hope for young people than I had for myself when I was younger. Let me put it that way. But this was wonderful.
Well, that's nice. It was really nice talking to you guys. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you all for being on this journey with us. You can find Rabia Auntie on Instagram.
You can find this podcast and other such fantastic content on ivmpodcast.com or at ivmpodcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you would like to find me personally, you can find me on Twitter at justayushi or on Instagram at ayushiA9.
And you will find me only on Instagram at RYTASH.
Ciao.
Namaskar, dear friends. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. Life, as you know, is a journey. And you and I, travelers, how can we celebrate this travel? I have a podcast for you, Begin the Journey. I share stories and moments from my life. Do tune in every Monday and Thursday to listen to my podcast on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from. Cheers.
Working Monday to Friday glued to your chair making you feel dull? Worry not. Get your 5-minute weekly dose of travel around the world with postcards from nowhere. Join me every Thursday as I explore the strange, obscure, and fascinating parts of the world and bring out facets of travel you may not have thought of before. You can find us on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.